declined and rejected the bill. Today we want him to resign. We want him to resign from the office because he lacks no confidence on us. We want him to resign, and all the MPs that supported...
Well, to unpack this further, I'm now joined by Peter Herbert in Nairobi. He's a retired judge and the former lead counsel at the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. Peter, good to talk to you. So, Ruto is grappling with possibly the most serious crisis of his two-year presidency. Is this an inflection point? Can he cling to power, especially when protesters are now calling for him to go?
I think it's going to be difficult. His credibility is really blown. And certainly the opposition in Parliament seems to have been bought off. And the loss of life is monumental, given the fact that this was just a finance bill. He appears to have lied as well, because he said that only 6 people had been killed when all the international observers said the numbers are in excess of 22, 23 people. And so there is a real question about whether he can cling to power if this level of brutality continues.
Well, you bring up the violence there and the brutality and the numbers of deaths. Has the Kenyan administration then taken too much of a heavy-handed approach with protesters? And do you think that they're now going to scale back, or do you think that they'll scale up?
Well, I hope they scale back, and certainly the international community, the Law Society of Kenya, Amnesty International and many other parts of civil society have called on them not to use live ammunition. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous to refer to these demonstrators as treacherous and traitors, and then the next day refer to them as children after they've been shot. Certainly, on the face of it, these are crimes against humanity that are occurring and are recurring in plain sight and have been well recorded by international media.
Now, the President Ruto, he has said, of course, that he wouldn't sign this finance bill into law, but in its place he will implement austerity measures. I mean, that's not good either. So what do you think he could do next? I mean, and what would you like him ideally to do? Do you think that he's going to listen to the voices of these young people?
I'm not entirely confident that he will. He says a lot, but does very little. And this message has clearly been given to MPs and himself over weeks and months. He could have done this last Sunday. He could have called time on Tuesday and didn't. And therefore, one of the things he hasn't tackled is the monumental corruption within Kenya, which the own Anti-Corruption Commission estimates at 33%. If you had anti-corruption measures, which would include State House itself, then there's no need for austerity in Kenya. This is actually a very prosperous country, but what you have is a level of exploitation of individuals and young people, which has led to the protests, with over 50% youth unemployment for people aged between 18 and 35. That must change.
Indeed, this corruption is igniting these protests. But when it comes to not acting or listening, do you think voters are then going to punish them at the polls?
Well, I think they will. The problem is that many administrations simply buy votes and buy elections. And one of the problems with democracies in some parts of the world is that politicians have on the face of it a democracy, but in reality, they use their power to buy votes and make sure that opponents are either arrested, abducted, or removed from the scene. So yes, if it was a free and fair election at the moment, it's highly unlikely he would be voted back in, and certainly his party, such as it is, would not enjoy their seats in Parliament, which they have done very little with, to act as a restraint on the arm of the executive.
OK, well, Peter Herbert, we'll leave it there, but thank you for unpacking this moving story for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.